On a gray morning in March 2005, in a small logging community nestled against the Cascade foothills of Oregon, a mother named Jennifer Harlow woke to find her 6-year-old daughter missing from their modest ranch-style home. The child's bedroom window stood open. Her pink backpack remained on the hook by the door. Her cereal bowl sat untouched on the kitchen counter. By nightfall, over 300 volunteers would comb the dense forest surrounding the town of Millstone, calling a name that would echo unanswered through the timber. The case would consume the community, divide a family, and remain unsolved for nearly 2 decades before a single sentence spoken by a traumatized teenager would finally crack it open. The question that haunted Millstone for 18 years was simple and terrible. What happened to Emma Harlow? Millstone, Oregon, in 2005, was a town of roughly 4,000 souls, built on timber money that had mostly dried up by the turn of the millennium. The main street stretched 4 blocks, anchored by a grocery store on one end and a feed supply on the other. Between them stood the usual infrastructure of rural America, a diner with rotating pie flavors written on a chalkboard, a hardware store that had been in the same family for 3 generations, a single stoplight that blinked yellow after 9 at night. The houses spread outward from this commercial core in concentric rings of increasing shabbiness, from the well-maintained craftsman homes near the center to the manufactured homes and fifth-wheel trailers that dotted the forest edge where the pavement gave way to gravel and dirt. The Harlow family lived in one of the Middle Ring neighborhoods, a development built in the 70s when the mills were still running 3 shifts. Their home sat on Pinecrest Drive, a street of nearly identical single-story houses with small front yards and larger backyards that backed up against second-growth forest. Jennifer Harlow was 31 years old in March of 2005, a checkout clerk at the Millstone market who worked the early shift so she could be home when Emma got off the school bus. Her husband, David Harlow, was 34, employed as a maintenance worker at the regional hospital in the larger town of Fairview, 23 miles to the east. They had been married for 8 years. Emma was their only child. Those who knew the family described them as unremarkable in the way most families are unremarkable. Jennifer was quiet, polite, remembered regular customers' preferences. David was handy, helped neighbors with repairs, coached a youth soccer team in the summers even though Emma preferred drawing to sports. The couple attended the Methodist church sporadically. They paid their bills. They argued sometimes, like everyone argues, but nothing that drew particular notice. Emma was a small girl for her age, dark-haired like her mother, with a gap between her front teeth and a collection of stuffed animals. She lined up each night according to a system only she understood. March 17, 2005, fell on a Thursday. The weather forecast called for rain, the endless gray drizzle that characterizes late winter in western Oregon. Jennifer Harlow's shift at the market began at 6 in the morning. She had set her alarm for 5:15, as she did every workday. She rose in the dark, showered quietly so as not to wake her husband or daughter, dressed in her store uniform of khaki pants and a green polo shirt with the Millstone Market logo embroidered over the pocket. She checked on Emma before leaving, a habit she maintained religiously. The girl was asleep, curled on her side with a stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. Jennifer pulled the door closed, leaving it open just a crack the way Emma preferred. David Harlow's shift at the hospital didn't begin until 8, but he had agreed to meet a colleague for an early breakfast to discuss some equipment repair. He later told investigators he left the house at approximately 6:45. Emma was still asleep. He did not check on her. He assumed she was fine. The school bus would not arrive until 8:25. Emma knew the routine. She would wake on her own, eat breakfast, brush her teeth, gather her backpack. She had done it dozens of times before. When Jennifer Harlow called home on her morning break at 9:30, no one answered. This was not immediately alarming. David would already be at work. Emma would be at school, but something nagged at her, a feeling she later described as ice water in her veins. She called David's cell phone. He answered on the third ring. She asked if he had made sure Emma got on the bus. There was a pause, longer than a pause should be. He said he assumed she had. He said he had left early. He said Emma was responsible. She knew what to do. Jennifer Harlow left work immediately. Her supervisor later recalled that she did not ask permission, simply removed her name tag, grabbed her purse, and walked out. The drive from the market to Pinecrest Drive took 7 minutes. She pulled into the driveway at 9:42. The house was quiet. She called Emma's name as she entered. The cereal bowl sat on the counter, still full of dry flakes, the milk carton beside it unopened. Emma's backpack hung on its hook. Her shoes were lined up by the door. Jennifer moved through the house, calling her daughter's name, her voice rising. She opened the door to Emma's bedroom. The bed was made, or rather half-made, the comforter pulled up unevenly as a child might do it. The stuffed animals were in their usual arrangement. The window was open, not just unlocked but open, raised approximately 6 inches from the sill. The screen was in place but unlatched. Jennifer Harlow would later tell investigators that she stood in that doorway for what felt like an hour but was probably 30 seconds, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. Emma never opened that window. The room was cold, the March air drifting in, carrying the smell of wet earth and Douglas fir. She called the Millstone Police Department at 9:47. The dispatcher later testified that Jennifer Harlow was calm at first, eerily calm, explaining that her daughter was not in the house and the bedroom window was open. Then something broke in her voice and she began screaming. The first officer arrived at 9:53. Officer Dale Mackey was a 7-year veteran of the small department, trained in basic search and rescue protocols. He secured the scene, or what he understood the scene to be, though at that moment it was not clear if a scene existed or if this was simply a child who had wandered off. He noted the open window. He noted the untouched breakfast. He walked the perimeter of the house, examining the soft ground beneath Emma's window for footprints. The earth was damp from recent rain. There were marks, depressions in the mud, but nothing clear enough to identify. No shoe prints, no drag marks, just disturbance. By 10:30, the Millstone Police Department had mobilized its entire force of 9 officers. By 11, the county sheriff's department had been notified. By noon, the search had begun in earnest. The methodology was standard for a missing child case in forested terrain. Teams of deputies and volunteers spread out in a grid pattern from the Harlow home, moving through the neighborhoods first, then into the woods. They called Emma's name. They knocked on doors. They checked storage sheds, abandoned vehicles, any structure large enough to conceal a small child. The fire department arrived with thermal imaging equipment. A helicopter from the state police made passes over the forest canopy. The community response was immediate and overwhelming. Parents pulled their children from school to join the search. The high school canceled afternoon classes, sending students and teachers into the woods in groups of 10 or more. Local businesses closed. The diner set up a volunteer coordination center, providing free coffee and sandwiches to searchers. By mid-afternoon, the number of people looking for Emma Harlow exceeded 400. David Harlow arrived home at approximately 10:50, called back from his shift by police. Those who observed him during those first hours noted his demeanor. He appeared shocked, disoriented, but composed. He answered questions methodically. He provided a detailed account of his morning. He had woken at 6:30. He had showered and dressed. He had left the house at 6:45 to meet his colleague, Tom Brennan, at the Sunrise Diner in Fairview. They had eaten breakfast. They had discussed work. He had arrived at the hospital by 8:15. He had not checked on Emma before leaving. He had assumed she was asleep. He had assumed she would be fine. Investigators asked him about the window. Had it been open when he left? He said he didn't know. He hadn't gone into Emma's room that morning. Had Emma ever opened it herself? No, he said, not that he knew of. Did she sleepwalk? No. Did she have any reason to leave the house? None. Did she have friends in the neighborhood she might visit? Yes, but not that early, not before school. The questions continued, circling, probing, as Jennifer Harlow sat on the couch in the living room, staring at nothing, her hands folded in her lap. By evening, the search had expanded to a 2-mile radius. Volunteers with flashlights moved through the darkening woods, their beams cutting through the mist that had begun to settle in the low places. The temperature dropped. Rain began to fall, light at first, then steady. The helicopter was grounded. The thermal imaging equipment became less effective in the wet cold. At 8:30, the search was suspended until morning, though some volunteers refused to leave, maintaining a vigil in the woods, calling Emma's name into the darkness. The Harlow house was processed as a potential crime scene that night, though investigators were careful not to call it that in front of the family. Technicians dusted for fingerprints. They photographed the open window from multiple angles. They collected samples from the disturbed earth beneath it. They examined Emma's room for signs of struggle. There were none. Everything was in its place except the child herself. Detective Sarah Winters from the County Sheriff's Department, the lead investigator assigned to the case, noted in her report that the scene presented several inconsistencies. The window was open, suggesting possible exit or entry, yet the screen was still in place and latched from the inside. The bed was partially made, suggesting Emma had been awake and moving around, yet her breakfast was untouched. Her backpack and shoes were by the door, suggesting she had intended to go to school, yet she had not dressed in school clothes. She was last seen wearing pajamas, pink cotton with cartoon rabbits. Detective Winters interviewed David Harlow formally that night. The interview was recorded. David repeated his timeline: 6:30 wake-up, 6:45 departure, breakfast at the Sunrise Diner with Tom Brennan, arrival at hospital by 8:15. Detective Winters asked him to estimate distances and drive times. The Harlow house to the Sunrise Diner was approximately 23 miles. In morning traffic, the drive typically took 30 to 35 minutes. David said he had left at 6:45 and arrived at the diner around 7:20. That aligned. He said he and Tom had eaten breakfast, talked for about 45 minutes. They had left around 8. He had driven directly to the hospital, arriving by 8:15. Detective Winters made note of the timeline. Something about it felt too precise, too rehearsed, but nothing was provably wrong. Tom Brennan confirmed the breakfast meeting when interviewed. He recalled David arriving at the diner around 7:20 or 7:25. They had eaten. They had talked about work. David had seemed normal, not distracted, not anxious. Normal. They had parted ways around 8. Tom had driven to his own job at a construction site. David had gone to the hospital. Tom said he had not noticed anything unusual about David's behavior or appearance. The investigation expanded outward from the family. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood, interviewing everyone on Pinecrest Drive and the surrounding streets. Had anyone seen Emma that morning? Had anyone seen unfamiliar vehicles? Had anyone heard anything unusual? Most had not. They had been asleep or getting ready for work or school. One neighbor, Mrs. Eleanor Voss, who lived 3 houses down and suffered from insomnia, reported seeing David Harlow's truck pull out of the driveway around 6:45. She was certain of the time because she had been watching the morning news, and the weather report came on at 6:45 every day. She had not seen anyone else. She had not heard anything unusual. Detectives obtained records from David Harlow's cell phone. The device had pinged towers consistent with his stated route from Millstone to Fairview that morning. At 6:53, the phone had connected to a tower near the highway between the two towns. At 7:18, it had connected to a tower in Fairview near the diner. At 8:12, it had connected to a tower near the hospital. The electronic trail supported his account. Yet questions persisted, quiet questions whispered between investigators, never spoken directly to the family. Why had David not checked on Emma before leaving? Why had he not mentioned the breakfast meeting to Jennifer until after the fact? Why had he seemed so composed, so controlled when his daughter was missing? Those who have worked cases like this know that everyone reacts differently to trauma. Some people scream. Some people collapse. Some people become very, very calm, as if by controlling themselves they can control the situation. David Harlow was calm. The search resumed at first light on Friday, March 18th. The rain had stopped, leaving the forest soaked and dripping. Hundreds of volunteers returned, spreading deeper into the wilderness. Search dogs were brought in, bloodhounds trained to track scent. They were given Emma's clothing to smell, a nightgown from her laundry hamper. The dogs worked the area around the house, circling, sniffing, but they found no trail leading away. It was as if Emma had simply vanished from her bedroom without touching the ground. By the end of the second day, the mood among searchers had shifted from hopeful urgency to grim determination. Children do not survive long in the Oregon woods in March, not without shelter, not in wet cold. The temperatures at night dipped into the 30s. Hypothermia becomes a factor within hours. The searchers knew this. They did not speak it aloud, but they knew. Jennifer Harlow appeared before television cameras on Friday evening, flanked by Detective Winters and a victim advocate from the county. She read from a prepared statement, her voice breaking. She begged whoever had taken Emma to bring her back. She described her daughter, her habits, her fears, her favorite stuffed rabbit. She said Emma was afraid of the dark. She said Emma needed her mother. She said please, over and over, please. David Harlow stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder, his face grave. The media coverage was extensive. Local stations ran the story as their lead every night. National cable news picked it up. Another missing child, another heartbroken family, another community in shock. Tips began to flood in. A child resembling Emma had been seen at a rest stop near Portland. A man acting suspiciously had been spotted near the woods behind Pinecrest Drive. A psychic called to say Emma was near water. Investigators followed every lead, exhausting themselves in the process, finding nothing. On Saturday, March 19th, the third day of searching, a volunteer discovered something in the woods approximately a mile and a half from the Harlow home. It was a small piece of fabric, pink cotton, snagged on a blackberry bramble. The fabric was sent for analysis. It matched Emma's pajamas. The discovery shifted the search focus to that area, teams converging, combing every inch. They found nothing else. No more fabric, no footprints, no sign of the child. Just that single piece, as if it had been placed there. Detective Winters began to consider alternative theories. She reviewed the case files late into the night, looking for patterns, inconsistencies, anything that did not fit. She returned to the timeline. David Harlow had left at 6:45. He had arrived at the diner at 7:20. The drive should take 30 to 35 minutes. He had made it in 35 minutes. But what if he had not driven directly to the diner? What if he had stopped somewhere? The cell phone tower pings showed his phone traveling along the expected route. But phones can be left behind, carried by someone else, or the pings themselves might allow for slight deviations. She examined the odometer records from David's truck. The vehicle, a 2002 Ford F-150, had been inspected by police on the day Emma disappeared. The odometer read 73,412 miles. Detective Winters obtained service records from the dealership where David had the truck maintained. The most recent oil change had been on March 3rd, 2 weeks before Emma disappeared. At that service, the odometer had read 72,890 miles. In 2 weeks, David had driven 522 miles. She calculated his commute. Round trip from Millstone to the hospital was 46 miles. He worked 5 days a week. Over 2 weeks, that would be 460 miles. That left 62 miles unaccounted for, a discrepancy that could be explained by errands, shopping trips, any number of ordinary activities. But it nagged at her. She interviewed David again on Sunday, March 20th. She asked him about his activities over the previous 2 weeks. Had he taken any trips? Had he driven anywhere unusual? He said no, just work, home, the grocery store, normal life. She asked if he was certain. He said he was certain. She did not mention the odometer discrepancy. She simply noted his responses and let him go. The official search was scaled back after 1 week. The massive volunteer effort was unsustainable. People had jobs, responsibilities, lives to return to. The county continued searching with a smaller team, focusing on areas identified as high probability based on terrain analysis and search dog behavior. After 2 weeks, even this was reduced to periodic sweeps. Emma Harlow had not been found. No body had been recovered. No evidence of foul play beyond the open window and the piece of fabric had been discovered. The case remained active, but it was effectively cold. Clears throat. The months following Emma's disappearance were a study in slow disintegration. Jennifer Harlow stopped working. She could not focus, could not stand at the register making small talk while her daughter was gone. She spent her days at home, Emma's room untouched, waiting for news that never came. David continued working, maintained his schedule, kept the house running. Neighbors later reported that they seemed to exist in separate orbits, Jennifer consumed by grief, David grimly functional. Detective Winters did not close the case. She continued to investigate quietly, reviewing evidence, re-interviewing witnesses, looking for the detail she had missed. She became convinced, though she had no proof, that the answer was closer than it appeared. She believed Emma had not been taken by a stranger. Statistics supported this. Most children who disappear are harmed by someone they know, usually family. She looked at David Harlow with increasing suspicion, but suspicion is not evidence. In June of 2005, 3 months after Emma vanished, Jennifer Harlow discovered she was pregnant. The pregnancy was unplanned, shocking, a biological reality that seemed obscene in the context of their missing daughter. She told David. He received the news without visible emotion. He said they would manage. He said it would be okay. She wanted to scream at him. Nothing was okay. Their daughter was gone, but she said nothing. She simply nodded. Their second daughter was born in February 2006, almost a year to the day after Emma disappeared. They named her Lily. Jennifer tried to bond with the infant, tried to feel joy, but every time she looked at Lily, she saw Emma. She saw what Emma would never be, the milestones Emma would never reach. David was attentive to the baby, changed diapers, gave bottles, woke for night feedings. He seemed to move through the motions of fatherhood with the same grim functionality he applied to everything. For those who have ever doubted someone you love, truly doubted them in the marrow of your bones, you understand the particular horror of it. You begin to notice things, small things, the way they look at you, the way they don't look at you. Jennifer Harlow began to notice. She noticed that David never spoke Emma's name unless she brought it up first. She noticed that he had removed Emma's photos from his wallet. She noticed that he slept soundly through the night while she lay awake, haunted. She began to ask herself questions she did not want to answer. In the fall of 2007, 2.5 years after Emma's disappearance, Jennifer and David sold the house on Pinecrest Drive. The decision was Jennifer's. She could not remain there in that place with Emma's empty room down the hall. They moved to a rental house in Fairview, closer to David's work. The change of location did nothing to ease the tension. If anything, it intensified. They were alone together now, away from the neighbors who had known them, away from the reminders of what they had lost, but also away from any buffer between them. Lily was a cheerful toddler, talkative, energetic, everything Emma had been. Jennifer tried to protect her, hovered constantly, would not let her out of sight. David accused her of being overprotective. They fought about it. They fought about money. They fought about everything and nothing. Mostly they did not fight. Mostly they maintained a cold silence, the kind of silence that fills a house like water, drowning everything in it. In the spring of 2009, 4 years after Emma disappeared, Jennifer confronted David directly. They were in the kitchen. Lily was napping. Jennifer asked him if he had anything to tell her. He looked at her blankly. She asked again. Did he have anything to tell her about Emma, about that morning? He asked what she meant. She said she thought he knew what she meant. He denied it, whatever it was she was accusing him of, though she had not directly accused him of anything. He said she was grief-stricken, irrational. He said she needed help. She said he was the one who needed help. He walked out of the room. They separated in August of 2009. David moved into an apartment near the hospital. Jennifer stayed in the rental house with Lily. The separation was amicable on the surface, arrangements made for David to see Lily on weekends, but beneath it was an accusation Jennifer could not voice and David would not acknowledge. They filed for divorce in November. The proceedings were straightforward. No major assets to divide, shared custody of Lily. The marriage dissolved quietly, another casualty of Emma's disappearance. Lily grew. She started kindergarten in 2010, first grade in 2011. She was a bright child, artistic, loved to draw. Jennifer noticed that Lily's drawings often included an extra figure, a girl standing apart from the family. When asked who it was, Lily said it was her sister. Jennifer had told Lily about Emma, shown her photos, explained that Emma was gone. Lily had no memory of Emma. She had been an infant when her sister disappeared. Yet she drew her, over and over, a dark-haired girl in the margins of her pictures. In 2012, Detective Sarah Winters retired from the county sheriff's department. Before she left, she made a point of visiting Jennifer Harlow one final time. She sat at Jennifer's kitchen table, drank coffee, and told her that she had never stopped believing the case could be solved. She told Jennifer that she had always suspected David, though she had no evidence to support it. She told Jennifer to watch Lily, to listen to her. Children sometimes know things they cannot articulate. Jennifer thanked her, though she did not know what to do with the information. The years accumulated. 2013, 2014, 2015. Emma would have been 16, 17, 18. Jennifer marked the birthdays privately, lighting candles, speaking to the daughter she had lost. David remarried in 2014, a woman named Rachel who worked at the hospital. They had a son in 2015. Life went on for him, ordinary and unremarkable. Jennifer could not forgive him for that, for the ease with which he had moved forward. Lily was different. As she entered her teenage years, she became withdrawn, moody in ways that exceeded normal adolescence. She had nightmares, vivid ones from which she woke screaming. She refused to talk about them. She began seeing a therapist in 2016 at age 10 for anxiety. The therapist recommended she keep a journal, write down her feelings, her dreams. Lily complied, filling notebook after notebook with words and drawings. In October 2018, when Lily was 13 years old, she spent a weekend with her father and his new family. It was supposed to be a normal visit. They went to a pumpkin patch, carved jack-o'-lanterns, watched Halloween movies. On Sunday evening, David drove Lily back to Jennifer's house. He walked her to the door. Lily went inside, said goodnight to her mother, went to her room. Jennifer thought nothing of it. 2 hours later, Lily came downstairs. Jennifer was watching television. Lily stood in the doorway of the living room, silent. Jennifer looked up, saw her daughter's face, and knew immediately that something was wrong. She asked what happened. Lily said nothing at first. Then she said very quietly that she needed to tell someone something. She said she had remembered something. Jennifer turned off the television. She told Lily to sit down. Lily sat. She was shaking. What Lily said next would reopen the Emma Harlow case after 13 years of silence. She said she remembered the morning Emma disappeared. She said she had not been an infant in her crib as everyone believed. She said she had been awake, standing in the hallway. She said she had seen her father carrying something out of Emma's room, something wrapped in a blanket. She said she had seen him go out the back door toward his truck. She said she remembered because it had scared her, the way he had moved, quick and silent, and she had gone back to her room and hidden under her blanket. She said she had not understood what she was seeing then. She understood now. Jennifer Harlow sat frozen, unable to process what her daughter was telling her. She asked Lily if she was certain. Lily said she was certain. She said the memory had come back in pieces over the years, fragments in her nightmares, and this weekend something had triggered it fully. She said she had been watching a movie with her father, a scene of someone carrying a child, and suddenly she knew. She knew what she had seen. She knew what it meant. Jennifer called Detective Margaret Chen, the investigator who had inherited the Emma Harlow case after Detective Winters retired. She called at 9:30 on a Sunday night. Detective Chen answered. Jennifer told her that her daughter had remembered something. Detective Chen arrived at the house within an hour. She interviewed Lily carefully, recording the conversation with Jennifer's permission. Lily repeated her account. She had been awake. She had seen her father. She had seen him carrying something. She believed it was Emma. The case was officially reopened on October 23, 2018. The Millstone Police Department and the County Sheriff's Department coordinated, forming a task force. They re-examined all the original evidence. They brought in new forensic specialists to review the material collected from Emma's bedroom and the piece of fabric found in the woods. They re-interviewed witnesses. They looked again at David Harlow's timeline from the morning of March 17, 2005. Investigators discovered something they had missed 13 years earlier, or rather something that had not seemed significant at the time. On the morning Emma disappeared, David Harlow's truck had been equipped with a bed cover, a hard-to-know cover that locked. In photos taken during the initial investigation, the cover was visible. In later photos, taken months after Emma's disappearance, the cover was gone. When asked about it, David said he had removed it because it was damaged. He said he had taken it to the dump. He did not remember when exactly. Investigators attempted to locate the cover. They could not find it. They also re-examined the odometer discrepancy Detective Winters had noted. 62 miles unaccounted for in the 2 weeks before Emma disappeared. They calculated possible routes David might have driven. If he had left the house at 6:45 on the morning of March 17th, and if he had not driven directly to the diner, where could he have gone? They mapped a circle with a radius of 31 miles from the Harlow house, half the unaccounted distance. The circle included dozens of locations, rural roads, forest access points, abandoned properties. One location drew their attention. Approximately 18 miles northeast of Millstone, accessible via a series of logging roads, was an old quarry that had been closed since the 90s. The quarry had filled with water over the years, creating a deep, murky pond surrounded by steep rock walls and dense forest. It was remote, rarely visited. If someone wanted to dispose of something where it would not be found, the quarry would serve. In December 2018, a dive team was sent to the quarry. The water was cold, visibility poor. Divers worked methodically, using sonar to map the bottom, then searching by hand. On the third day of diving, December 12th, they found a vehicle. It was not David Harlow's truck. It was an old sedan submerged for decades. But near the vehicle, wedged beneath a ledge, they found something else. Fabric. A blanket, decomposed, barely recognizable. And within the remains of the blanket, small bones. The bones were recovered and sent for analysis. Forensic anthropologists determined they were human, consistent with a child between 5 and 7 years old. DNA testing was ordered. The process took weeks. On January 28, 2019, the results came back. The bones were Emma Harlow's. David Harlow was arrested on February 1, 2019 at his workplace. He was charged with murder, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence. The arrest was carried out quietly without drama. Officers approached him in the hospital parking lot as he was leaving his shift. They informed him of the charges. He did not resist. He did not speak. He was placed in handcuffs and led to a patrol car. Colleagues who witnessed the arrest later said he seemed almost relieved, as if he had been waiting for this moment for 14 years. The media coverage was intense. The case that had gripped Millstone in 2005 returned to headlines in 2019. Reporters descended on the small town, interviewing anyone who remembered the Harlows, anyone who had searched for Emma. The community was divided. Some people had always suspected David. Others refused to believe it. He had coached soccer. He had helped with repairs. He had seemed like a good father. How could a good father do such a thing? The trial began in September 2019. The prosecution built its case methodically. They presented Lily Harlow's testimony, now 14 years old, describing what she had seen the morning her sister disappeared. They presented the forensic evidence, the bones recovered from the quarry, the DNA match. They presented the timeline, the odometer discrepancy, the missing to no cover. They presented David's behavior, his lack of emotion, his refusal to search, his two perfect alibis. The defense argued that Lily's recovered memory was unreliable, that she had been an infant at the time and could not possibly remember events from that morning. They argued that the forensic evidence was circumstantial, that bones in a quarry 18 miles away did not prove David had put them there. They argued that the prosecution had no motive, no explanation for why a father would harm his daughter. They painted David as a grieving parent, wrongly accused by a vindictive ex-wife who had poisoned their daughter's mind. The prosecution's closing argument was delivered by Deputy District Attorney Marcus Reeves. He stood before the jury and said this: David Harlow had 13 years to tell the truth, 13 years to give Emma's mother closure, 13 years to show remorse. He chose silence. He chose to let his wife suffer. He chose to build a new life while his daughter lay at the bottom of a quarry. That is not the choice of an innocent man. That is the choice of a man who knows exactly what he has done. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They returned a verdict of guilty on all charges. David Harlow showed no reaction. He sat motionless as the verdict was read, as the judge thanked the jury, as the bailiff led him away. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jennifer Harlow attended every day of the trial. She sat in the front row, directly behind the prosecution table, where David could see her if he chose to look. He never did. She later told reporters that she felt nothing when the guilty verdict was read. Not relief, not satisfaction, just emptiness. Emma was still gone. The verdict did not change that. David Harlow has never confessed. He maintains his innocence from his cell at the state penitentiary. He claims the evidence against him was fabricated, that his daughter's memories were false, that he is a victim of a justice system that needed someone to blame. Some people believe him, most do not. Lily Harlow is 20 years old now, attending community college, studying art therapy. She does not speak publicly about her father or her sister. She has said, through her attorney, that she hopes her testimony gave Emma a voice when she could not speak for herself. She continues to draw, and in her drawings the dark-haired girl is no longer standing apart from the family. She is simply gone, a space where she used to be, an absence that remains. The town of Millstone has moved on, in the way towns move on from tragedy. The house on Pinecrest Drive has been sold twice since the Harlows lived there. New families occupy the old neighborhoods. The mill has been converted to artist studios. The main street looks much the same, 4 blocks of small-town America, but the people who remember March 17, 2005, still talk about it sometimes quietly over coffee at the diner or in line at the market. They talk about how you never really know someone. They talk about the dangers that live inside ordinary houses on ordinary streets. Emma Harlow was 6 years old when she died. She never learned to ride a bike without training wheels. She never had a first kiss. She never grew up. Her mother keeps her ashes in an urn on the mantel, next to school photos that stop at kindergarten. There is no grave to visit, no headstone with dates. Just a small container and a mother's memories of a gap-toothed girl who lined up stuffed animals in careful order and was afraid of the dark. The case is closed now officially. The questions have been answered, or as many as can be. But for those who look closely, for those who understand that justice and truth are not always the same thing, questions remain. What happened in that house on the morning of March 17, 2005? What drove a father to harm his own child? David Harlow has never said, and perhaps he never will. Some silences are permanent. Some truths stay buried even after the bones are found. If this story mattered to you, subscribe and hit the bell. Share the episode. Someone somewhere may still be waiting to be heard.